So, welcome back to the Identity Human podcast. Let's make sure this thing works right. Great to have you guys back. And you're here with your host, Don, and other host, just Don tonight. So, a little backstory quickly. I'm going to tell you what we'll talk about tonight first. So, tonight or today, whenever you're listening, I'm going to be talking about the 4 steps to enlightenment. So, these are some important aspects that I've found in a book called Awareness by Anthony De Mello. And I think they are one of the most empowering steps that I've come across and still use today. And I read that book maybe 2 years ago. And it really does help with a lot of things that we think about, talk about, experience day to day. But before we get there, I have a little story to say. We recorded an incredible podcast last night between myself and Ray. We took a case study. We got into flow. The podcast is supposed to be 20 minutes. We took 42 minutes. And honestly, I was sat there and I was like, this is going really well. We were interacting really well. The conversation flowed. We had a few opposing thoughts, which should have created a good narrative for the audience. And as you guys listen, they're going, look at Don and Ray arguing out in front of everyone, but not arguing, discussing different points of view in a way that makes it okay, because we want to be able to work through how we all deal in life is like my truth, her truth, the truth, and how can we overlap that as much as possible. So really healthy discussions, using a case study, giving some thoughts, and then ending it off really well, and like adding some real good nuggets. And if you watch it, you could pick up some very good things. Here's the issue. At about 40 odd minutes, so it's 30 minutes and 39 minutes, 38 seconds. If you're watching the video, you can spot me see something in the corner of my eye. Ray's mid-conversation, she's oblivious to what's going on, and you can see me changing my focus to the screen. And then back to the left, but it's not the left where Ray's sitting, it's just in front of her. And then you see me looking down to the floor, and then you see this look come on my face. And I go, let Ray finish the sentence just in case I'm wrong. And then I stop and I say, I don't think that microphone is working because I can't see the sound wave going up and down on the microphone software. And then I notice that the cable for her mic isn't plugged in. Okay, so now I'm looking at my mic and there's a little purple dot that shows me that it's on. And I'm like, okay, maybe this whole time we've picked up my one. But unfortunately, in order to have 2 microphones, we've had to use a piece of software that essentially merges the 2 different inputs into one input that we put into this recording software that we're using, which means that if hers wasn't working, I couldn't see it moving, and I couldn't see mine moving on it, then it had also somehow faulted or bugged in that software, even though I'd opened it, so that my mic wasn't even being picked up. So we still kept cool. And I was like, we're just going to finish this in case it is still recording. And we're going to leave it in because it's quite a funny moment. Ha ha. And then we tested the mics afterwards and they weren't working. So before I ended that episode, I said, we're either going to finish this, find out it's not working and laugh, or we're going to finish this, find out it's not working, we're going to have an argument. And I would like you guys to think which one we did. So I'm just going to leave it there. So you're not going to be able to see that episode. We're going to have to redo it. And where we thought we were getting ahead for the week, we actually then fell behind. And hence I'm doing this solo tonight because Ray had to go out with a friend. And we're recording this a bit later than usual. But it's all good. It's all part of the journey. And that's what we're here for. It's not meant to be the perfect process. It's meant to see who falls in love with the process, not the outcome. So if you're here, it's because we really want to emphasize the process of what we're doing and not the outcome. So on to what I think is the more important aspect of the episode tonight is I'm not really sure how long it's going to last. It might last another 5 minutes, meaning we're only taking 10 minutes of your day. It might last a bit longer. But usually because I'm going solo, I get to really wrap my thoughts around, give a bit of an explanation, and then end off. So let's see how this goes. So the first point, if you think about, there's 4 steps that I want you to think about. So the first step in enlightenment, so maybe we can define enlightenment first, is I think we can all be aware, but sometimes just being aware, you say, I'm quite self-aware. I know when I'm feeling this way, I know I'm feeling this way. That might only be step 1 of step 4. Okay, so if you think about it, I did a couple of like the personality tests, the personality trait things that we do today, and there was one person that was like, "Yeah, I'm quite self-aware," and they knew themselves, and I was like, "Surely at some point we've got to recognize that you could be super self-aware, but you're missing the layers, you're missing the levels." And I think we all go through this. We all go through these. You don't know what you don't know, so you can only be as self-aware as you think you are self-aware, right? So I don't want to go into a tangent there, but these 4 steps to enlightenment, and I want to see how you fall into this category as you listen to this. And I think that we probably get stuck on step 1, not stuck, but because we don't know any better, we stay at step 1. And if we go by this book, it says 4 steps to his words were wisdom, but I like the other definition of wisdom I got, which is the 6 steps. This one is 4 steps to enlightenment, which is the same thing. It just depends on how you define it. So I just want to clarify that. So I feel like we all would get stuck at step 1 until someone nudges us or bumps us over into step 2 and tells us what step 3 is and tells us what step 4 is. And then it's up to us to just keep practicing that over and over and over again until it becomes ingrained in us. And so that's what I wanted to bring to you, is like, you're either long into this pathway and you're aware of what I'm saying, or you're at step 1 and you're aware of it, or you haven't even heard of them. And so let's see what comes out of this for you. So step 1 is, the main highlight is, get in touch with whatever feelings there are. So the example that it's used is like, you only know that you're depressed when you experience joy. So if you ever think about gaslighting, like, you can look at a situation where someone stays in a abusive relationship, or essentially what parents do to kids is you gaslight your kids. It's the way you say it and what they believe, you make them believe that that's how the world works. That's why it's really important to get as a diverse touch points for your kids, even if you disagree with people's viewpoints, is because it broadens the viewpoint of the world for your kids, so that you're not gaslighting them inadvertently. But back to the point is, you only know that you're depressed when you experience joy. So you only know you're not at rest when you've rested and you go, oh, is this what this feels like? So the whole point of step 1 is, let's get in touch with whatever the feelings are. Now, I imagine most of us have been given that advice, or can recognize that, like, I'm not feeling it today. I'm not feeling motivated. So I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling anxious. So the first step is always accept how you feel, become aware of them, right? So, and we all get told that is the answer to self-awareness. Like, oh, you're working through that. Okay, let's just be aware of our feelings. And how often do you sit in, say, meditation or mindfulness, and the first thing is, just be aware of what you're feeling. Just be aware as you go down your left shoulder, the tightness that you might hold in your forearm, or just be aware of your breath. And just so they're on the right track with, let's just be aware of how we're feeling and what we're feeling. Okay, but what I want to highlight is there's more steps, and there's 3 more steps. So being aware of how you feel is that first step, and that's great, because if you're even unaware of how you're feeling, that's where you've got to do a bit of work. Now, step 2, and this is what I really like when it starts to open your mind, is recognize that the feeling is within you. So within you and not from the outside. So it is not real. And that's in capital letters. It's not real. And what I really like about this, as I probably said it in one of the first couple of episodes of the podcast, is Mo Gaudat, Google X CEO, talking to Stephen Bartlett on his High Performance podcast, or the Diary of the CEO, sorry, and he's talking about happiness. Solve for Happiness was the title of it. Is like how you find happiness. He's got an interesting story, but he said you have a choice, and he knows that he's going to lose a lot of people when he says you have a choice, because generally the feelings are, or the narrative is, if you're depressed, it's not a choice. If you're happy, it's not a choice. It just is how you feel. So he says, I know I'm going to lose people when I say this. And I was like, yeah, it's quite a strong stance to have, by telling people that they have a choice, because I've interacted with a lot of people prior to that podcast where people go, that feeling is not a choice. Do you think I want to feel like this, right? So there's basis on that. You can really convince yourself. But he said, let's take rain for an example. He said, if it rains now, and I know I've definitely used this before, but there's new users. I mean, there's new listeners, and I want to emphasize this. if it rains right now and you don't want it to rain, how are you going to feel? Okay, so you're going to feel sad. You're going to feel like, oh, this weather's depressing. Oh, why does it have to be like this? But the other side of it, if it rained and you wanted it to rain, how are you going to feel? So obviously, I hope you're going to say happy, excited, curious, grateful, refreshed, right? So all positive feelings. So what the point that honed in here is rain is just rain. Rain is not happy. Rain is not sad. And we need to recognize that what we do is we put the feeling on rain. Now, go back to what step 2 is. The feeling is within you. So it is not real. It is a feeling. It is a choice. It is there. And obviously it's real, but it's not as the world sees it real. And that's where you have to recognize that you have a choice. You have an interpretation. Now, if you want to take that onto a tangent, there is a book that my mom gave me, and it says, when everything changes, change everything. And it talks about how our whole life is a series of interpretations and stored memories. So when we react to the present day, we are only reacting according to our knowledge of what has been. And so a part of trying to rewire our reactions to present day is recognizing that our first initial reaction is based off of what we've come from and what we know. And we need to be able to pause and redirect the movie to say, what is actually going on here? And that I like the way that ties in the two concepts that we're trying to talk here. Is the feeling is not real. The feeling is real within you, but it's not real within the world. So there's a very big distinction here. So if we can then start to recognize that we are setting a certain emotion, we are choosing it. So when we recognize how we feel, first is I feel angry. Then we've got to recognize that the anger I feel is within me, not within the person that I'm dealing with, the situation that I'm dealing with. So I hope you're staying with me here. And the one point I want to say on that is don't give people that power over you. Don't give people the power of you to be able to manipulate your emotions. So just on that is start to recognize when you react to certain things, you're giving that thing your power. So if you can start to think about holding your power, essentially it's holding how you react to those things that are outside of you. And we really want to make sure that our emotional control comes from within. And we're hopefully empowering you as we go through this. So step 3 is never identify with the feeling. So what does that mean? So the classic example is when people have anxiety, they say, my anxiety, I am anxious. And what this book is trying to tell you is you say, there is anxiety. I am surrounded by anxiety. I recognize that anxiety is currently circulating me. I currently feel that anxiety. So there's a very big separation between I feel and I recognize. Does that make sense? So I made a note that says, do not define the self as an emotion. So don't define yourself as depressed. Don't define yourself as anxious. Don't define yourself as stressed. Now, what we also have to accept, the duality of life comes in here, is you also cannot define yourself as happy or ecstatic or excited, even though those are okay to attach to. But if we really want to make sure that we're not attaching and defining ourselves by the emotions, we have to recognize when we do it for the positive as well as the not so positive. Okay, so that step 3, I think, is quite important. And I hear it a lot when dealing with people that have come to me for a bit of coaching or just general day-to-day. And if Ray was here, I actually said to her at the end of our recorded podcast episode last night, I was like, it would be good to do a coaching session on you or get you to be a bit vulnerable about the journey that you've been on and how we've changed some of the things that you felt and what tools, what narratives, what the way we started to look at it in a different way and how that's helped you deal with where you are today. Now, again, I just want to stress, I am anxious versus there is anxiety is recognizing the same thing. We're not about trying to say, we're not trying to deny, we're not trying to sweep things under the carpet. Definitely not. Because I'm actually the opposite. You have to feel. So step 1 is recognizing that feeling. So we're not trying to say block the feeling out, because I think that only ends up coming back to bite you. So step 3 is we have to start to recognize that we are not that emotion, and that emotion that we recognize is a choice. And the way that we can work through that is by allowing it to detach itself from us, and then accept that while we're sitting in and we feel that anxiety around us, we're just going to be there. We're going to recognize it, but we're going to observe it. So by being an observer is you're seeing that it's not part of who you are. And as if you read the book in a bit more depth, he says that's how things pass through. And I've really used that a lot at some very important times, or to help other people through some really stressing times and some really trying times. And it seems to be something that's really helped, is because they no longer attach themselves to that thing, and that allows it to free up. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel these things anymore. It just means that when you do feel them, you're going to be able to move through them a lot quicker, because there are patterns, there are triggers, there's so much depth to it, that it's not about going, this is going to cure how you feel, but it's about knowing how you can move through them quicker. And the quicker you can learn to move through them, obviously the less they're going to affect you, the less they affect you, the less you think about them, and you're probably going to end up in a point where they are not something you recognize as being within you, around you, or that can affect you, and you're into a different level of awareness, enlightenment, or power. Now, step 4 is the last step here. As you said, stop expecting others to change. And this was huge. This is really cool, because even if we can detach ourselves from like the outer layer. So if you're at work and a customer comes, and a customer has an issue, you could probably get to a point where you're like, I can't really control how they come across. So I'm not going to ask them to not be angry. I'm not going to ask them to just change, right? But often the closer to home it gets, the more we have high expectations of others. When we have expectations of others to interact with us in a certain way, treat us in a certain way, what we're doing is we're expecting them to change. Now, the book gives a really good example. He says, if you're sick, so let's replace sickness for if you're feeling a certain way, right? So I'm just trying to simplify here. And you go to the doctor, and you have a good chat with the doctor. You tell the doctor how you're feeling. And at the end of the consultation, the doctor says, I completely understand what you're going through. I completely understand why you're feeling that way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to prescribe your neighbor medicine. And you go, yeah, thanks very much. Right? How absurd is that? He said, I know you're sick. I can see you're sick. So go and give this to your neighbor. And we accept that on a day-to-day. So we constantly blame or hold to account others for making us feel a certain way. And if you can think about that example that I've just given, it's like the doctor giving your neighbor medicine to fix you. Actually, it's the medicine's got to be for you. So the point is like, stop giving other people control of how you feel. So stop thinking that they need to change before you can. And I'm going to swing in maybe Mahatma Gandhi here, saying, be the change you want to see in the world. So if you want something that's external to you to change, then don't wait for that external thing to you to change. Change how you see it, change how you feel towards it, and just start to accept that responsibility within yourself. And if you keep that power, then you start to see things change around you. And I think it's one of those where if you're listening to this and it's a new concept, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm not sure about this, Don. My emotions are quite heavy. I've had this for 20 years. You don't understand this. But I very rarely will only give thoughts on things that I've gone through without having looked into it and without having to take. I'm at the concept of, if someone's been through something for 60 years and then they know something, I'm going to listen to them and I'm going to remember what they say, as opposed to going, well, they're wrong. I'm going to go through this for 6 years and only then will I know. That's the whole point of how we speed up knowledge and speed up concepts and we go through things quicker. Is I really like those steps because I've noticed them in myself. I've noticed them in people that I've helped. I've noticed them in people that are really close to me that I've spent half of my lifetime observing, talking to, and understanding. And so if you are cynical about it, you've got nothing to lose by trying it, right? So I'm going to say that. If you already understand this, I'm hoping that if you're at step 1 and you're stuck and you're like, Don, those other steps are incredible, then that's awesome. Now I'll keep working on it. And also if you understand all the way to step 4 and you've got to step 4 and you're saying, I've really tried that, taking it on myself, but nothing's changed. It's like, well, hold on. It could just be a big change that you're waiting to happen. And as soon as you stop focusing on yourself and you expect other people to change, that's when you lose your power. So you've got to keep holding your power, and you won't have recognized how far you've come because you're focusing on the negative. And we need to make sure we're focusing on the opposite of the negative, i.e. the positive. So I'm going to repeat those steps. Step 1, get in touch with whatever feelings there are around you. Step 2, the feeling is within you and it is not real outside of you. So again, anger, if you feel angry, that's your anger. But the object or thing that is around you making you angry is not angry or anger or an emotion. It just is. And if you can start to recognize that, then you recognize choice. If you can start to recognize choice, you realize you have a different choice that you can make. Step 3 is never identify with the feeling. So just I am anxious versus there is anxiety. I am happy versus I'm surrounded by happiness. That then creates a level of detachment that allows you to move through things quicker, allows you to make those choices a bit better. And then step 4 is stop expecting others to change. Don't give your neighbor the medicine that you need to get better. Okay, and obviously it can go into depth, and it's a very good book. So I just thought I thought we haven't in a while given some practical, thought-provoking concepts that are probably going to help someone listening that needs to hear these steps or needs to hear the deeper conversation, because at the moment everyone's trying to do the shallow stuff. And I like to sometimes just fill these in, because Identity Human, what we're all about is trying to make sure that we are unleashing your potential as who you are for yourself and who you are within yourself, not who you are in one aspect of your life, so that we can bring that gift, that sunshine that you're meant to give the world into every aspect of your life. And that's the whole point. And like Ray actually said it yesterday, and we didn't record it, but it was like, it's Identity Human is high performance in everyday life. And I know that might sound cliche, but I actually think we need to lean into that. Because I said, when she defined it yesterday, I said, the world is moving at such a fast pace. We're learning at a fast pace. There's this new technology. There's a load of mental issues perhaps going on. And there's a lot that's just got a big narrative at the moment. Is we need to be able to recognize that where you could just make sure in the olden days that you had this nice pace of life and you could just crack on, now we have to take what used to be high performing for only the elite few that were dedicated full time, and we have to apply that to ourselves, because that's just the speed of the world, the speed of intelligence, the speed of learning, the speed of like society is going that direction, and we need to make sure that we are catching up and we are pushing forward. So I hope that today's episode has given you some value, conceptualize something that you're going through. If this is a message that you needed to hear, then I'm really glad it landed. And if you think that you know someone else that needs to hear it, then please let them hear it. Or if you can't say it to someone that you know needs it, either get them the book, Awareness by Anthony De Mello, or recommend the podcast. Because that's what we're all about. We're trying to get this out to as many people as possible to have as greater effect and value as possible. And at the core of it, I have 4 children that are going to be growing up into society, and I'm going to have an effect on it in some positive way so that they can carry on. And then my great grandchildren will be going into something that is adding value and is better than what we've currently got, because I feel like we've got that from the previous generation. I think it's on us to be able to do something, in the word I learned, ephemeral, something bigger than all of ourselves. And that's it. So I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. That way, if you're the best that you can be, you're going to help me be the best that I can be, and vice versa. Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you. I'm very grateful for you. And in absence of Ray, I know that she also was sad not to be able to do it, but she's got a bit of a sore throat and is a bit tired. So we have to make sure that we get this done. Right, guys and girls, we'll see you in a week's time, if not sooner. Cheers.